With the Ohio State loss, all Penn State needs is a win over Maryland for a spot in the Big Ten championship. Under 9 to play in the first half, Drew Aller fumbles the exchange, picks it back up, avoids defenders, dumps it off to Tyler Warren. Warren jumps over a dude and breaks off a 29-yard pickup. That would lead to a Penn State touchdown. Oh, yeah. Get up, big fella. Next Penn State drive, Aller to Tyler Warren, his BFF. Penn State scores 44 unanswered. Wins big, 44-7. Warren, most receiving touchdowns by a tight end in school history, 17 passing, Pat Freiermuth. And Penn State advances to the Big Ten championship for the first time since 2016. They will face Oregon next Saturday night, 8 Eastern, a game you can see on CBS. The first meeting between the schools since the 1995 Rose Bowl. 1 versus 4. Nittany Lions against the Ducks. Oh, baby. It's going to be a good one. I was hoping it was going to be the Buckeyes and Ducks, but it's not. And so this is what you got. Ohio State on the outside looking in as they lose to Michigan. So we will not get a rematch between Oregon and Ohio State. Maybe in the playoff, maybe. But it is Oregon, and we are in the Big Ten title game. All right, back here with Emory Hunt and Chip Patterson. And Emory, look, I'm happy for Penn State. Look, Ohio State beat them. They took care of business. They're in the Big Ten title game. What they do to teams sometimes, like a Maryland, they got down early, 7-0. They scored 44 straight points. You want to talk about a guy that should get an outside invite to New York? Tyler Warren. The guy does it all. He's one of the best tight ends in the country, and I know you evaluate that position, and this is a very good draft class.
Yeah, he is one of the best football players in the country because he does so much inside the red zone. He's their Wildcat quarterback. He's like Taysom Hill. We saw a big play from him on a broken down play from Drew Aller. Just found Tyler Warren standing nearby, flipped him the football. He leaped over defender and then ran 20-something yards down the field as well. So this is someone who's outstanding with the ball in his hands, and that's why you want him to have the football in his hands. He's a matchup nightmare. He can't just be your leading receiver, though, and I think that's where Penn State's going to have to get that other parts of their receiving core to step up and bring something else to the party. But, man, Tyler Warren, to your point, Hakeem, fantastic football player.
One thing I loved about this game was how Maryland's first touchdown was a cold shower for Penn State. Like, the Nittany Lions were sleepwalking, and then all of a sudden they woke up and they realized, oh, yeah, we're Penn State. And this is what Penn State does to teams at the bottom of the Big Ten. They absolutely pound them. It is one thing that I love about James Franklin's Penn State program is that they are consistency. If you are worse than Penn State, then almost all the time, Penn State is just going to impose its will because they are better than you. The criticism of James Franklin in the Penn State program has been what happens when Penn State punches up. And that's the thing that's going to be really interesting that we get to see in the Big Ten championship game, because Oregon represents another opportunity for this Penn State team after losing against Ohio State, and for this Penn State program that has consistently fallen short against the best teams in the country to be able to show that this is a little bit different, and to be able to claim a Big Ten championship that the program has been so close to, if not for an Ohio State, if not for a Michigan. And that's going to be something that will give us a lot to learn about the Nittany Lions as we look ahead to how they're going to be in the college football playoff. Because when the college football playoff was expanded to 12 teams, one of the first things that myself and a lot of others did was to retrofit it. Say, okay, if we had this format all the way back to the beginning of the playoff in 2014, who would be some of the programs and some of the teams that would have more playoff appearances? Penn State's at the top of that list. Penn State has had so many 9-win and 10-win seasons where they would have been in the college football playoff. Well, James, Penn State, now you got your opportunity. You got it thanks to Michigan, which is a little bit weird, but you got it. So what are you going to do on Saturday against Oregon, and what are you going to do in the college football playoff? Because now you have, thanks to absolutely pounding Maryland like you always do, the opportunity to be able to show you are, in fact, one of the best programs in the country.
Yeah, Penn State's won 4 straight meetings against Maryland by a combined score of 156-36, so outscoring them by 120 points. How do they outscore Oregon in the Big Ten championship?
Well, it's not about outscoring Oregon. It's about stopping Oregon. And that's the best thing Penn State can bring into this ball game. Their defense today, 6 TFLs, 6 sacks. They had 3 interceptions. You're going to need that type of effort against this spread offense of what Oregon does. But Oregon may spread the field, but their foundation is running the football, and you have to be able to stop the run. I think that's where Penn State can have some success against Oregon and keeping this thing close, because on the other side, we know Penn State can run the football. We know Drew Aller has played really well. They have the matchup piece we talked about in Tyler Warren, but I think the biggest thing for them against a Oregon Ducks team is going to be defense. Can they get those stops? Can they get Oregon off the field? Because Penn State, I feel like, can play any type of game that you want them to play offensively. They can play up tempo. They can be a little bit creative with how they move things around and get you looking one way and come back the other way. And they can also just run downhill at you. So the defense versus Oregon is where Penn State will have to step up and win.
And Chip, it perhaps could come down to some red zone defense, right? With Dylan Gabriel throwing the football, he's made mistakes. They've made mistakes in the red zone. Perhaps that's where this game is won, in between the 20s.
I mean, Abdul Carter putting pressure on the quarterback, coming off the edge. This Penn State defensive front that can rush you into making mistakes, that's going to be huge. And one other thing about this matchup that stands out to me is, look, I know James Franklin's a huge fan of CBS Sports HQ. So, James, I promise you I'm not telling Oregon anything that Dan Lanning doesn't already know. But earlier this season, you know who had a pretty good game against Oregon's defense? Michigan tight end Colston Loveland. 7 catches for 112 yards as Michigan found creative ways to get their star tight end the ball in ways that sort of caused alignment fits for this Oregon defense. I expect Andy Kotelnicki, the Penn State offensive coordinator, and the rest of that Penn State offensive staff to utilize that game tape, and I expect Oregon will try to make those adjustments as well, because if Colston Loveland, a very good tight end in college football this season, can have a big day, think about what Tyler Warren, maybe the best tight end in college football, could do against that very same defense.
How the tables have turned, or how the turntables, if you're a big Office fan. When you sit and look at what Penn State has been, let's say, gifted the opportunity, they lose to Ohio State, they want to fire James Franklin after that game, and then Ohio State loses to Michigan, and they're now in the Big Ten title game. They're 3.5-point underdogs, Penn State is. You taking the points?
Oh, I'm taking the points.
You are.
Here's how things tend to work for Penn State, right?
They've never been in the playoff.
And we joked about
this year.
We joked about this consistently, like how Penn State loved the fact that there is a 12-team playoff, because now there's no expectation. All you gotta do is play Penn State football and you're gonna get in, which means you're gonna lose the big game, but then you'll still lay back, win 11 games or 10 games, and you'll be in the postseason. Now you get thrust back into the spotlight into a big game, and this is an opportunity for James Franklin to quiet a lot of the Penn State doubters, win a big game. Now, granted, they'll just readjust it to them winning a playoff game, but this is a big game coming up. If they can win the Big Ten title over a #1 Oregon team, that'll buy him another week before they say, hey, you got to win a playoff game. But at least they get an opportunity to show that the Ohio State game was an anomaly and not a sign of things to come.
One thing that I love, if I'm a Penn State fan, is the way that this team has been tested in so many different spots in different kind of games. I think back to the USC game on the road in overtime. You know, I think back to the Minnesota game on the road, you know, where all of a sudden you can't get stops against Max Brosmer and against Darius Taylor. You know, I think back about the way that Penn State has had to really figure out different ways to win along the path to being where they are, playing for a Big Ten championship against Oregon. You know, I think that the Nittany Lions have learned a lot about themselves this season, maybe in ways that other years they didn't, when they really did pound everybody who's lesser and then go and lose to Ohio State and Michigan, finish 10-2, go play in the Cotton Bowl or something. No, this is going to be a season where they've had to look in the mirror with some really difficult spots. And I think of all the players on that roster, who's better off for it? It's their quarterback, Drew Aller. The highly touted prospects coming out of high school. He's never really become the superstar. He's not dominated the sport, but he's gotten better and better along the way. He's found new ways to utilize his skill set to be able to help his team win. And I think that in a game that I 100% expect will come down to the final 2-3 possessions there in Lucas Oil Stadium on CBS, America's Most Watched Network, the network of stars. I think that Drew Aller's experience to this point will give Penn State a better chance to win.
So Penn State has won 31 straight regular season games against teams other than Ohio State and Michigan, and they have Ohio State and Michigan to thank to get to the Big Ten title game. 0-5 against the Buckeyes and Wolverines over that span. How about that? Penn State into the Big Ten championship next Saturday on CBS.